by probably the millions now over time. And his government, the Saudi government, hosts this because it occurs at the city of Makkah in Saudi Arabia. And it's always been a source of great pride, but it's also been a source of headache security-wise to make sure nothing happens. Some years ago, because of some inner conflicts, the Iranians came with some bombs, and anyway, they blew some people in Hajj. Hajj really tightened down. Security was in place. It's still very, very secure. And it's something that not everybody, you can go on it if you're a Muslim. If you're not a Muslim, don't bother, okay? You're not gonna make it in. We had one man that I know of, some crazy British explorer, in the late 19th century decided to go on the Hajj and sneak in. His name was Richard Burton, not the actor, but this was a guy who just loved to do some wacky things, and this was a pretty crazy thing. They did catch him. They did find out who he was. But he said, they didn't kill him or anything. They just cut off a couple of arms. And, no, they didn't do anything here. They just said, have show respect, basically. Okay, so we're going to start off with that, and then I have a video that I'm going to show you today on the ancient city of Petra, Idumea, the Nabatean kingdom, pre-Islamic, just to sort of get a view of the architecture, what that whole thing was like, and how it all sort of ties in, and we'll come back to the sort of tying all these things into the lecture. So, you want to explain a little bit what you're going to show here?
Okay. Today is the celebration of Eid al-Adha. Eid al-Adha means festival of sacrifice. It's the sacrifice of Prophet Abraham with his son Ismail. So it's also a special occasion because it concludes the one part of Hajj, or the biggest part of Hajj, which is pilgrimage. And I have done it 3 times myself, so I know about it. It's not very easy, but it's one of the greatest things I did in my life. And I can answer your questions if you have any questions about it, because I think this documentary is brief and they skip a lot of things. So if you have any questions about it, let me know. And yeah, it's amazing. There's at least 3 million people. This is the official numbers. I think it's much more than that. So 3 million people from all over the world, from different languages, from different backgrounds. It's beautiful, and it could be chaotic a little bit because you cannot communicate with them. People who cannot speak any word in Arabic or English, or they don't even sometimes respond to your sign language. So it's really difficult sometimes to have a conversation or to explain to them, something. So, but at the same time, it's very amazing experience. And yeah, I mean, probably most of you, except maybe Saudi guys, don't know anything about it or don't know a lot. So this is a good starting point, but I would recommend watching longer, documentaries about it, to explain all the other things. So we're gonna start with it, and Hajj is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. And the way we took it when we were in primary school is like setting up a tent. So the first and the base pillar is the believing in God and Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And the other ones is to pray 5 times a day, fast Ramadan, give up alms, which is about 2.5% of your income, and the Hajj, if you can, once in your lifetime. So this is important, thing in Islam, and many people, they wait all their life, to save some money and do it. Fortunately for me, it was close. It was about 1,000 kilometers, about 600 miles. So I went all the 3 trips I did for my Hajj were by bus. But some people do it by airplane, but it's not the same. So we'll start with it, and if you have any questions. And the greetings is Eid Mubarak. is the most simple and the most common one. There are many other forms of greeting people, so if you want to greet me and my fellow Saudi men, so you can say Eid Mubarak, which is the greeting.
Prophet Muhammad is born just less than a couple of 100 miles away. So what people were not aware of, and what we were trying to work out in this class, is that you had the Byzantines in the west and all throughout the Middle East. You had the Persians to the far east, covering the Persian plateau and everything up to the Tigris River, down to the Gulf. But what nobody anticipated was somebody else is going to come along and just totally change the frickin' neighborhood. And that's the rise of Islam in the 6th century. Teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, absolutely nobody predicted this. Everybody saw the status quo continuing, the continued friction between the late Persian Empire and the Byzantine Empire, Byzantine Orthodoxy, Christianity, having long been established in that area, and nobody thought there was any change coming. Nobody foresaw any change. And yet everything would change within a century. I mean, totally change. This is the greatest geopolitical, I think, change, explosion really in history. This is the rise of Islam, which is both a religious change, it is also a political change, it's a geographical change. Things just plain, the world is turned upside down. And that world, from the world of Western Arabia, from the city of Mecca, Medina, it's going to spread all the way to the east, Persia, across into Pakistan, what is Afghanistan, Pakistan, northwest India, westward across to Egypt, all of the Sahara, through Libya, Morocco, all the way to the Atlantic, across Gibraltar, into Spain, is just an incredible spread. And we're talking about within a century, where Islam becomes the dominant religion. It's not the dominant religion by force, it's the conquest takes place by force, but the religion of Islam fills in after it. Now, we've talked a little bit about this, and I won't promise I won't keep you past 12. What we saw, the Prophet Muhammad was born essentially 570 AD of our era. He's orphaned. He's ultimately raised by an uncle whom we talked about, Abu Talib. That he is also raised in the caravan trade. He becomes a tradesman. He's still an underclass person in the sense that he is an orphan. But his uncle also is a member of the Hashemite clan, very powerful clan, so there is protection for him. It's a thing that sort of is out there that saves his life. It's no good to be without protection, no good to be as an orphan. And that this is all happening in an area that nobody much in the West or in the East knows much about. This is an area that is not on the main, it's not main line. You know, it's like you have San Francisco on one side, Portland, Seattle, LA, and then somebody says, well, what about Ashland? What about it? How do you spell it? Where is it? Nobody, okay, it's the same thing. I mean, people here think they're big shit, you know what I mean? Hot stuff, big time, main line, so full of crap. I just love this town because it's so full of crap. Okay, if you look at Mecca, Medina, they're not looking at themselves as being the center of the universe, not like Ashland. But nonetheless, they're part of the margins of larger civilizations around them and have been for centuries. There had been already a great history of larger kingdoms in the Arabian Peninsula. We saw this about the Nabateans today. There's still a lot we don't know about them, as you can see. The people of Sheba in the south, same thing. A lot about it we don't know. But here it comes. So he marries in the year 595, marries a wealthy widow, Khadijah. That's a significant turning point. She does this after he goes on a caravan trade on her behalf, makes a profit, a handsome profit. I don't mean Muhammad the prophet, I mean a profit like money, okay? Makes money on this deal. They're married. He's successful. He's very honest. We talked the other day whether he could read or write. That's still a debate. My guess is he could. It just seems logical that he would have been able to read and write something. But at the same time, I'm not going to sit there and argue about that. Because some people say, no, the miracle is that he didn't know how to read or write. But anyway, in the year 610, he's 40 years old. He's already has a reputation of being a very spiritual person, very withdrawn, into secret prayer life in the caves around Mecca. And then he begins to receive this revelation. It's not a gradual thing. It's a very profound, startling thing from the very beginning. How one deals with that as an historian becomes a question. Can an historian simply take at face value what is said in the Quran, what is said in the traditions, what is said in the hadiths, and say that's what happened? No, they can't. Why? Because historians cannot deal with the metaphysical. They cannot make a pronouncement about what is spiritual. They can't. Why? Because we have no way to measure it. But what we can do, and this is what we have tried to do with the rise of Islam, talking about the miracles of the Prophet Muhammad, things that happened to him, is take the word of those who were there who talked about it and say, this is what they said. What we cannot do is say, therefore, that's what actually happened. We can't go that far. We can only say that's what is an historian. Now, as a theologian, you can say anything you want. You can talk about the spiritual and you can say how this is all happened. Historians are not really, let's put it this way, you can do what you want, but you're not really permitted to do this in terms of, not a classroom, but just in terms of your own research analysis. But what we're saying here is something remarkable happened. It's testified to by the presence of everybody who wrote about it at the time. We can find it. We can find it in the change in the culture. We can find it in the writings of those who lived at the time, who lived through these things, and said, this is what happened. We did the same exact thing with the life of Jesus. We take the Gospels. The conversion of Constantine on his deathbed, because he said he saw a sign in the heavens saying, this sign conquered. Fine. Do you say it that way? No, you don't. As a historian, you don't say it that way. But this is what you say. You say, according to so-and-so, this is what the sign that he saw, this is what happened. Okay? Because historians are not theologians. We can only deal with ascertained facts as much as possible. And then we interpret them. Sometimes okay, sometimes not so good. Everybody has their own interpretive edge to things. So, he begins to receive revelations in the cave near Mecca. God is one, God is great. Repudiation of polytheism. Polytheism has got to go, it's wrong. A final judgment of hell or paradise. You have to make the choice. Paradise for those who believe in the words of the prophet. Hell for those that do not. How unlike that is Christianity or Judaism? Very close, very similar. The difference is you have a divine book that is produced here that is based on the word in Arabic for to recite or recitation. Means that the words come from the speaking voice of the Prophet Muhammad. As the words are given to him, he's given words by the angel Gabriel. Now there was a question as whether, was it God that gave him the words directly, or is it an angel, or I mean, what was it? And I think at first there was some interpretation that God spoke to him directly. Then eventually came the interpretation that it's the angel Gabriel who appeared. It's speaking directly to him, giving him the words, and as he says the words, he has an amanuensis, a secretary, someone there to write the words down as he utters the words. So this is not divine inspiration, this is divine dictation. Every word is the word of God. Every word, every word, every word. Which means that the Quran must be kept intact, unchanged from the original classical Arabic in which it is written. That service must always contain that element. You may have certain sermons and you may have certain messages given in colloquial Arabic or any other language, but the service, the basic reading of the Quran must be in the original Arabic. That's the way God gave it. And that's the way it continues. And that's why you have so much of Arabic that is also spread into all these areas where the religion of Islam spread. Because the use of Arabic in the service, both in the mosques and in the little schools, the madrasas, is done in the classical Arabic. So Arabic feeds into a lot of other languages today as it did in the past. It's a powerful, powerful, powerful move here. This Quran is something that's very different. Remember a verse from the New Testament, 2 Timothy, I think it's 3:16. All Scripture is given by inspiration of God. It is profitable for a number of things, rebuking and so forth. But inspiration is a Latin word, simply means, inspiro means God breathes. The Greek for that shows up in the Greek New Testament is theonoustos. Again, it's another God breathing. But here in the Quran, it is not theonoustos or inspiro. It is the word Quran to recite. It's a recitation. It's a direct quote. You're quoting God directly. The only time that happens in the Old Testament, there are specific times. The one example is when God gives Moses the 10 Commandments. He gets the word of God directly. Thou shalt do this, thou shalt not do. Okay, that's direct quotation. That is direct dictation. You have some little of that in the New Testament as well with the words of Jesus. If Jesus is God, then that is direct dictation, what Jesus says. I'm not trying to preach these things. What I'm trying to say is understand the difference. Something that would not be necessarily direct dictation is when Paul writes to Timothy, Timothy, drink no longer water, but drink a little wine for your stomach's sake and your many illnesses. And many Christians love that verse. That's one of my favorites. And but the Baptists always hope that Jesus turned the wine into water, and the other way around. Okay, fine. Not me. Okay. Now, but that's advice. That's a bit of advice from an old hard-traveled apostle. He's going around the Mediterranean, and he walks into the little church at Corinth, and they say, "How about a little wine?" Oh, yeah. Fine, great, okay. It's not a recommendation to get sloshed. It's simply the water in some parts of that Eastern Mediterranean area was very bad, and Timothy was always getting sick. Paul's advice: drink, but that's not direct dictation. Paul's not saying that because God said it to him. Paul's simply giving him advice. So the interpretation is that this is inspiration, that the text is inspired, but it's not dictated. This is human advice from an old man to a young guy, how to get a little healthier here. All right, pick this, yes, please.
How old is the movie? Because some information were old.
Oh, the information. That movie is probably 10 years old,
Okay.
at least.
Okay.
Yeah, because some of the stuff is out of date.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
right.
I know. But don't you love Star Trek? Leonard Nimoy.
There is a good movie about the message of Islam. It's called The Message.
I've seen
It's
this.
a Hollywood movie.
This is a very good movie.
Yeah.
Right, right.
By Mustafa Akkad.
Wasn't that filmed in the Moroccan haze?
Yes, Morocco and
Yeah.
I think Libya.
Yeah.
It was
yeah.
produced by Muammar Gaddafi actually.
Okay, so everybody Thursday, continuation of Muammar Gaddafi.